What's up, y'all? It's T-Tar. So we're starting up speculating again, and I wanted to start off by talking about something pretty crazy in the DLC, the Indigo Disc. What actually is it? As we're approaching the end of Scarlet and Violet, it almost feels like they're not gonna actually answer what it is. We might have to wait like another 10-20 years for Polya to be revisited for them to answer. Or it could be answered if they take a different path with the next games, which is if they do Unova with the twist, but I'll talk about that later. We gotta talk about the Indigo Disc. What actually was that? So in the games, to go back to Area 0, Gita gives you this Indigo Disc. And this Indigo Disc turns out to be something that reacts to the Zero Labs interface in sending someone down to the underdepths. Honestly, I thought a lot about this because it was really confusing that it's called the Indigo Disc, the same thing as Tyranitartube. It makes you think of the ancient civilization, right? You know, there's tablets in Area 0, ancient people used to be here. But there's another way to look at the Indigo Disk item that makes it a lot more simple, which is it's just something made by Sada and Turo to be a key to go into the Underdepths lab, which is where their top secret research is happening. They're studying the Tyranitartube shell and inventing the Terra Orb down there, and it seems Sada and Turo are the ones who discover the 19th Terra type, which is a pretty simple explanation. So then we lined this up with Gita saying she got it from an investor that was looking into Area 0 a few years ago. It kind of lines up. So around the time Sada and Turo passed away, I guess at some point this disc got out to some investor. Which is weird, right? This is all quite a simple explanation. Which is good, y'all. Usually in these videos we're only speculating, not coming to proper answers. So it's called the Indigo Disc, probably even as a joke by Sada and Turo. On many layers, it's an indigo colored disc, and also they love Tyranitartube, which is the Indigo Disc, so that's probably why it's named that. The dead giveaway to this has to be that their interface is what takes the disc. Now you can look at this from a more complicated angle, like about the ancient people in Area 0, and if the Zero Lab was a recent construction, or if it was there a long time ago. You see, I dug through as much as I could in the games, and the only real mention of time figures we get concerning Area 0's labs is that the first research lab was made 87 years ago. But these research labs are stations set up to research Area 0 in a relatively safe way. There's no real lore on what the Zero Lab really is and how it got there. And in fact, I just saw this post here, Mysteries of Area 0, Zero Lab and the Machine, where they talk about how the Zero Lab has no entrance. Okay, so looking at this while editing, when I take a closer look, it does have an entrance, right? It's this here, and it leads through this pipe. But what I find weird is that there's this buffer zone, which is a lot more intricate to have constructed this building with that in mind. It's almost like the people who made this lab knew in the first place that they would need a buffer zone and all this. And the way it's all broken looks like it was just people who came after that didn't know how this buffer zone door worked, so they just broke through the glass on the side, which kind of gets a bit eerie to think about. Initially when we're playing through the games, we think, okay, the Paradox Pokemon shattered it while they were all huddled in there. Yo, what were they doing? So the professor's lying down like this, they just dancing around the professor? So it brings up the idea, like, what if that Zero Lab is much older and maybe connected to those ancient people? What if the time machine is much older? As far as we know, it only sounds like... I remember digging through all the dialogue in the game. It only sounds like Sada and Turo were repairing the time machine. And then, you know, in the Tyranitartube cutscene where they summoned Sada and Turo from the past, they call it a failure, their attempt to get Pokemon from other timelines. So it sounds like maybe they went to Area 0 and found this broken time machine, and what Sada and Turo were really doing was trying to repair it, which also lines up, I noticed, with what Clavel says at the very start of the game. When you first meet Sada and Turo's AI on the screens, Clavel thinks to himself, Sada and Turo, did you really do it? When he's referring to Koraidon and Miraidon, as if Clavel knows what? That Sada and Turo were trying to repair that time machine. If that makes more sense than that Sada and Turo were trying to make a time machine. If Clavel was down there when Sada and Turo were in Area 0 researching, it makes sense he would have stumbled upon that broken time machine too. So then we think about this Indigo Disc again. Maybe it's from the ancient people. I find it kind of crazy to think. When you play the DLC, that elevator goes 3,300 feet into the ground. Ain't no way Sada and Turo made that. I think ancient people they somehow made this elevator that goes all the way down there. You can see it's not something magical. It is hard equipment, a giant elevator that takes you down. There's even pipes on the side. There's like canisters of oxygen. There's nothing magical happening here. The only magic concerning going to the underdepths of Area Zero somehow is Heat somehow got there. But not with science. He magically got there. And he took photos, which are accurate to what we see down there. But that's a different topic. I think it's possible that the Indigo Disk, that the Zero Lab was made a long time ago by the same people who left those ancient slabs. And people who might have, well, if they had access to the underdepths, they probably knew about Tyranitartube. So maybe it being called the Indigo Disk is this key item from a very ancient time, 2,000 years ago, of the first people that were researching Tyranitartube. It takes a lot of pressure off Sodden Tour and makes it more realistic when you think of them as not the first people to figure all this time machine crap out, right? So they find the Indigo Disk somehow, they make it to Zero Lab, they make it to the underdepths, they repair the time machine. It makes their dream more realistic rather than them being this like superhuman, like 1,000 years ahead of their time. It's also a bit more fun that way, right? If this whole game is kind of treasure hunt themed, it's a kind of fun treasure hunt for Sodden Tour. If they have the remnants of this mysterious time machine and lab, and they're really researching to figure out how to get it back running to fulfill their dream. So that's the idea I wanted to put out there. What really is the Indigo Disk? Do y'all think it was made by Sodden Tour recent times? Or do you think they didn't make it, and I guess it was made by ancient people who originally had to do with making that entire Zero Lab situation? And so when they ask you to put the Indigo Disk in, it's not something Sodden Tour made to make sure only they can get in. It's something ancient people made to make sure only they can get in. Darn. Let's go to some of y'all's theories. Time travel / dream theory. Hi teacher, I think it's both at the same time. Both time travel and dreams combined. No! I will fight you on this. We're not involved in dreams. Y'all gotta admit it's a lot more fun when we don't talk dreams, you know? Sodden Tour have to actually figure out how to make a time machine, not just will it into existence. And also, there ain't no mention of dream powers except by the mythical of this game. He's the only one who really messes with granting your dreams. Tyranitartube, I like him not being a dream Pokemon. Alright, make sure y'all shank that like button. There's only one thing left in the Indigo Disc to talk about, and then there's crazy Unova things that we gotta talk about, and that is solving the time loop. There's some pretty good answers to this, as well as another time loop that might have happened that we're gonna talk about. But make sure y'all shank that like button. Let me know your thoughts on the Indigo Disc, and I'll see y'all either later today or tomorrow. Take care.